good morning to From Beside the Tracks. This next 3 Saturdays teaching, taking basically from some messages by Steve Brown of Key Life Ministries. And yes, I have permission as long as I tell you where they came from. And you can visit that website at keylife.org and find some great and encouraging teachings there. We're going to look at the light shining in darkness. Look at Matthew 2 with me, verses 1 through 23. When Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, "Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and have come to worship him." When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And when he had gathered all the chief priests and the scribes of the people together, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. So they said to him, "In Bethlehem of Judea. For thus it is written by the prophet, 'But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not the least among the rulers of Judah. For out of you shall come a ruler who shall shepherd my people Israel.'" Then Herod, when he had secretly called the wise men, determined from them what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the young child. And when you found him, bring word to me that I may come and worship him also." When they heard the king, they departed, and behold, the star which they had seen in the east went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. And when they had come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary, his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented gifts to him, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Then, being divinely warned in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed for their own country another way. Now, when they had departed, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, "Arise, take the young child and his mother, flee to Egypt, and stay there until I bring you word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him." When he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night and departed for Egypt, and was there until the death of Herod, that it might be fulfilled, my son. Then Herod, when he saw that he was deceived by the wise men, was exceedingly angry, and he sent forth and put to death all the male. "A voice heard in Ramah, lamentation, weeping, and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, refusing to be comforted, because they are no more." Now when Herod was dead, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, saying, "Arise, take the young child and his mother, and go to the land of Israel, for those who sought the young child's life are dead." Then he arose and took the young child and his mother and came into the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was reigning over Judea instead of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. And being warned by God in a dream, he turned aside into the region of Galilee. And he came and dwelt in a city called Nazareth, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the prophets, "He shall be called a Nazarene." So we're going to look at Matthew 2 and see some things that happen when the kingdom of light invades the kingdom of darkness. We'll dig into the main thoughts from this text. In his book, The Generation That Knew Not Joseph, Lloyd Billingsley compares Marxism under Stalin with democracy. And he talks about the 60 million people that were slaughtered under Stalin's Marxism. Then he talks about people of our generation who don't remember what it was like at all. And the twits who went to the USSR said, "Oh, it's wonderful." He quotes Vladimir Vonyevich, who was exiled, and someone asked him, "How did you write a book in the Soviet Union?" And he said, "I wrote a chapter and hid it. Then I wrote another and I hid it too." Well, Billingsley compares the two cultures of that time. Then he closes his book with these words: "Perhaps, too, one could pause and hope, listening to the communists convince a young, searching man by the name of Malcolm Muggeridge that no earthly solution could be found, no earthly battle won. It was then that he turned his attention to the city of God, which man did not build and man cannot destroy. There may be others like him in the audience," he said. I'm thinking of two other kingdoms today that stand in marked contrast, the kingdom of darkness and the kingdom of light. In Matthew 2, we see the invasion of light into darkness, as Jesus Christ in his incarnation enters the darkness and shined forth as the light of the world. For generations, tears of anguish had streamed down the faces of humanity. Is there a God? Does he care? Does he really care? Is he some kind of mean God? Does he care for me? And then the light broke into the darkness. "And you shall call his name Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins." So what's happening here in Matthew 2 is someone cracking open the door of the kingdom of light, and the light is shining in the darkness. I want to look at 5 effects of the kingdom of light entering the kingdom of darkness. This outline is from Steve Brown, by the way. First, when the kingdom of light enters the kingdom of darkness, there is great joy. Verse 10, when they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. I used to love visiting my sister's church down in D.C. They're like you guys, you know. They laughed easily at that in those days. You know, a clear sign of the presence of the Holy Spirit in a congregation? They laughed freely, not hilariously. Hermes called the Holy Spirit the happy spirit. C.S. Lewis, when he wrote his autobiography, named it Surprised by Joy. That's no accident. I've been sternly taken to task because I use too much humor in play acting. Actually, in one church, I was filling in for someone whose name I would mention, and he chuckles at this still. And he said, by the way, if you happen to use too much humor, this one dear woman in the front, don't be offended, she'll get up and leave. Sure enough, she did. But I don't stop doing that. I learned that even in hard times, true Christian faith isn't just sourness. If you want to know if someone has a real life with Christ, look for people who smile easily, who aren't so tense. If you really think about it, we're the only ones who have a reason to laugh. And we're free, and we're going to live forever, and it's going to be unbelievable. Hugh McHale, when he was being led through the streets of Edinburgh, Scotland, to the gallows, with his followers all lined up and weeping along the way, was heard to say, "Rejoice, rejoice with me. I'm one day's journey from Jesus Christ." The light has shined into the darkness, and in the light we have understood that we can live forever. We don't have to be guilty anymore. There's a reason for living, a God who is in control. And like Mercy in Pilgrim's Progress, you remember? We laugh and laugh and laugh. Secondly, when the kingdom of light breaks into the kingdom of darkness and death, there is not only great joy, there is great adoration, Matthew 2:11. First, just an aside on those gifts, by the way, gold was a gift for a king, incense for worship, and myrrh was a costly embalming spice to prepare his body for his 3 days in a borrowed tomb before he got up. No matter what you think of him, if our president came into the room now, we'd show proper honor. I tell you, if Pastor Greg Laurie walked into the room, I'd probably applaud loudly, and I'm thinking you would too because of his long and faithful service to the task of evangelism that has been given him. If the leader of Iran came here, it would probably be coldly silent. Hopefully you wouldn't hiss. But if Jesus Christ walked into this place, we would all fall on our knees or our faces and worship him. What is worship? Is it singing a nice song of praise? Is it falling on our knees or raising our hands? No, that's not worship. Listen, worship takes place when a creature recognizes who the Creator is. Get that? Worship takes place when a creature recognizes who the Creator is. A lot that passes for worship today is nothing more than psyching ourselves out, right? We need to get back to the heart of worship. It is adoring the person and work of Jesus Christ. And I remember watching I, Claudius years ago. Caligula was a tyrant, and he got sick. And Publius, who was one of his, they call him a lickspittle, I guess, said, "Oh, divine one, I'd die for you." Well, after he got well, Caligula had him put to death. Oy, boy. Our worship is often superficial. And what if God took us up on it? We sing, "Take my silver and my gold, not a light mite would I withhold." And what if God said, "Hey, that's a good idea, I'm going to do that"? Or we say, "I love you, I worship you," and God says, "Yeah, you're lying through your teeth. You have bitterness and hatred toward others. You live the way you want to live." Don't try to psych up your feelings for worship. Just look at him and realize who he is, and worship will take place. Worship, as my father termed it. I love Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem in Luke 19. Remember, all the people are out there yelling, "Hosanna, Hosanna!" And the religious, and this is the bad situation, be cool, don't want to make any waves. Tell those people to be quiet. And Jesus said, "Dude, even if the stones would cry out if I told them to be quiet." You don't stir up real worship. You don't psych yourselves up. You look at him for who he is, and worship takes place. Thirdly, when the kingdom of light enters the kingdom of darkness, there's not only great joy and great adoration, but there is also great anger. Matthew 2:16. One of the great lies which Christians foist off on themselves is that if we can get the whole world to listen to what we believe, they'll all be happy too. That's not the case. In his poem, No Difference, Shel Silverstein wrote, small as a peanut, big as a giant, we're all the same size when we turn off the light. Rich as a sultan, poor as a mite, we're all worth the same when we turn off the light. Red, black, or orange, yellow, or white, we all look the same when we turn off the light. So maybe the way to make everything right is for God to just reach out and turn off the light. Well, you can agree with the sentiment, but in the context of our text, I don't. Because when we turn out the light, we're all alike and we lose it all. If you've read John Milton's Paradise Lost, that's been a long, hard read ago, you know that Satan is made to look more attractive than God. It's great poetry, but it's lousy theology. Let me tell you something. Evil is bland, it's silly and superficial, it's dull. And goodness and righteousness is power and life. And don't let anyone tell you the difference. You know what I'm saying? What's your sign, man? I'm going to give you a couple of principles here. People who are in the darkness want everybody to be in the darkness. If you remember that, it will help you understand some of your friends. Also, people who deny the light are threatened by people who have seen the light. Did you get that? People who deny the light are threatened by people who have seen the light. And when they're talking on college campuses, they take them out. And C.S. Lewis, The Chronicles of Narnia, which I love, the book The Last Battle, they've reached real Narnia, picture of heaven. And they're there forever. And Aslan, the great lion, the symbol for God, for Christ, is there. And they're walking into the most magnificent sunny day that you could possibly imagine. And there were a group of angry, dirty, inward-turning, selfish dwarves who believe they're in a filthy, smelly cattle shed with filthy water and dirty animals. And they're sitting in a circle. And Lucy goes over to them to try to talk to them. Look at that sky. Have you ever seen such a sky? This is Narnia. This is wonderful. And they push her off, and she goes to Aslan and said, can you help? I can't help, but I'll show you what I can and can't do. So Aslan and Lucy stand around those dirty dwarves, and Aslan growls, roar! And the dwarves think someone has played a trick on them, created a machine to frighten them, and then Aslan creates a grace feast for them. So they eat, and they think it's filthy water and dirty hay, and they won't turn away. And then this very insightful comment is made. They have chosen cunning instead of belief. Their prison is only in their own minds. Yet they're in that prison and so afraid of being taken in that they can't be taken out. I love that series. In his book, The Problem with Pain, C.S. Lewis makes this comment. The damned are, in one sense, successful rebels to the end. The doors of hell are locked on the inside. The point of this is men prefer darkness. If you say you've seen the light, you're a threat to that darkness. When the light penetrated the darkness in Matthew 2, first century people got angry, and they still do. Don't be surprised. Fourthly, I want you to see, if you will, that when the kingdom of light breaks into the kingdom of darkness, there's not only great joy, adoration, anger, but there's also great pain. Great pain. Look at Matthew 2:18, and let me give you a parallel scripture in Romans 8:22 and 23. We know that, listen, we know that the whole creation has been groaning in the pains of childbirth right up to the present time. Not only so, but we ourselves also, who have the fruit, the first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly as we wait for the adoption, that is the redemption of our bodies. Remember John the Baptist when he was in prison? He was having a little doubt, self-doubt, and so forth. Was Jesus really the Messiah? In Matthew 11, he sends one of his followers, or some of his followers, to find out, and Jesus says, hey, it's a verse that doesn't seem to fit. It says, hey, even from John the Baptist till now, the kingdom of heaven has been forcefully advancing, and forceful men lay hold of it. It was a book written a number of years ago about schizophrenia. Maybe you remember it. I Never Promised You a Rose Garden. Do you ever try to grow roses? My friend, the late Bob Smith, that's Robbie Thu's grandpa, had seen some elegant ones. I mean, he did some beautiful things. He put banana peels at the base of, I don't know how he did it, but they were beautiful. And he said, it's not easy. You need to spend a lot of time. You need to get your fingers pricked, and you have to feed and water and prune and weed, and it's a lot of work. And the kingdom of light is the same way. The kingdom of light takes over the kingdom of darkness. It's exactly like that. When the kingdom of light breaks into the kingdom of darkness, there begins a cosmic battle, and people are still getting wounded. There's a deep feeling in the light that will bring pain like you never knew. The reason you have such a struggle with yourself is that the light is working. And the reason you have a broken heart is that the light is working. Someday there will be no more sorrow, sadness, and darkness. Paul said in Philippians 1:29, for unto us is given in the behalf of Christ, not only to believe in him, also to suffer for his sake. Adoniram Judson, a renowned missionary to Burma, endured untold hardships, trying to reach the lost for Christ. For 7 heartbreaking years, he suffered privation and hardship and hunger, and then he spent 17 grueling months in Ava prison, where he was shackled and subject to horrible mistreatment. And as a result, for the rest of his life, he carried ugly scars left by those chains and shackles. Undaunted, on his release, he asked the leader of another province for permission to enter and preach. Indignantly denied. "My people are not fools enough to listen to anything you have to say, but I fear they might be impressed by your scars and turn to your religion." Now finally, when the kingdom of light enters the kingdom of darkness, there's great expectation. Matthew 2:6. When Lincoln Stefano and the others went to Russia after the Bolshevik Revolution, he came back with the oft-spoken comment, "I have been into the future and it works." Well, it didn't work and never will work. But I want you to know that Christians, when they go to Bethlehem, can say, "I have been over into the future and you can't stop it." In the first chapter of John, verse 14, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word became flesh and lived among us, and we have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. And George Orwell's words reflect the world parallel for the other kingdom. It's, "In the end was the lie, and the lie dwelt among us, graceless and false." Steve Brown tells of Pastor Ken Smith, who's a great Bible teacher who loved God. And when he was a young boy, he grew up in Mississippi. You remember Boys State, it used to be? Yeah, Boys States and Girls State. Well, elections all over the country, and 2 representatives went to Washington, D.C., and one was elected president, and they worked in Congress. Well, Ken, as a boy, ran on a total segregationist ticket in Mississippi, and he was one of the 2 to go to D.C., and he was determined to win the election as president on a segregationist platform. He said when he got there that there was a young senator named John E. Kennedy, and he said, "Ken, you want to learn something while you're here?" And he said, "Yes." He said, "I want you to get to know that boy over there." And he said, "I looked over and he was black." And he said, "We roomed together that week." He won the presidency that week. He went and bowled together. We ate our meals together, and I got to know him, and I loved him a lot. He said, "When I got back to Mississippi, I was no longer the same man I used to be, and a lot of people were angry." By the way, this man paid a big price early in his ministry when he could only stay at a church for 3 months because he was faithful to the truth that he learned. In an interview, he was asked, "Ken, what happened at that time?" And he replied, "Friend, a door was cracked open. Once the door is cracked open, you can't shut it again. There are things you cannot reverse. Toothpaste back in the tube, spilled milk bottle. And have you ever tried to stop dying once you were born? You cannot reverse some things. But what we find in Matthew 2 is the past that ensures a future, that when the door is cracked open and the light begins to shine in the darkness, that all of the forces of hell will never be able to shut it. That's part 1 of this study from Beside the Tracks.